Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting Daily December. This is Daily December 2015, day 11. Because, yeah. Um, um, First things first, I feel horrible. I feel absolutely 100% just like crap. Everything hurts right now. Um, uh, so, for those of you that may not be aware. I don't know how you cannot be aware of this, but I figure I'll say it anyways. Um, Stress in general actually has a negative effect on your immune system. When you go through stressful situations, it actually weakens your immune system because your body is um, working to technically you're working a little bit of overtime to deal with the stressful situation, especially when you have things like panic attacks and that, where you're flooding your system with adrenaline on a regular basis. You're forcing your body to work harder, which means it has less time to deal with other things like keeping your immune system up and running and things like that. So, um, when you go through particularly stressful situations for extended periods of time, your immune system doesn't always, it can be weakened to the point where you get sick more often, which doesn't help the stressful situation. I think, I have no idea if this is actually true, but this is what I'm going with right now. I think that's what's happened to me. I feel like shit. I think I'm probably coming down with something. I have no idea what it is, but it makes being me not fun in any way, shape, or form. Um, I'm also not sleeping almost at all at this point, so I just feel like shit. Um, However, I did want to comment on something that happens a lot um, and annoys the fuck out of me because, again, it's misinformation and lies ruling the world. I'd like to preface this with the fact that I don't technically agree with this statement. However, I want to show kind of the falsehoods that are built into the argument that is happening right now. And that argument has everything to do with, what is it, Justice, what is his name? Scalia, I think that is his name. He's one of the Supreme Court justices. Antonin Scalia, I believe, is how you pronounce his name. Um, and he made a comment recently because there is currently a uh, thing going up to I'm not sure if it's going to the Supreme Court or it's going through the court systems um, about a apparently, and again I'm paraphrasing from an article I read a few days ago, so I may be getting some of this wrong. My understanding though is there is a Caucasian, I believe it was a woman, who was denied entrance into, I think is the University of Texas. Um, Simply, she claims, because of the fact that she was Caucasian, and they have a quota of minorities that they have to fill. Um, there are laws and was it common law uh, that while I personally was not aware of colleges having to have quotas of certain minorities and things like that. I do know if you don't have a certain percentage of minorities in anything, whether it's employment, whether it's a college, it's actually very, very simple to take you to court for discrimination, even if you weren't actively discriminating. If it just happens to be that your ratios are not what the civil rights activists claim that they should be, they can take you to court over it. And according to the article I read, again, I'm remembering an article and I'm very, very sick right now, so I could be 100% wrong on this. According to the article I read, at least this college has a quota that they have to meet. A certain percentage of the students that they allow in have to be from certain minority groups. Um, This one specifically, I believe the issue was she's claiming that an African American student was able to get in instead of her, even though this Caucasian student actually had better grades and things like that that would qualify her for the position. But again, they had already met their white person quota. They hadn't met their black quota. So she got in kind of on, the other student got in kind of on a default. Well, you're not actually competing with everybody in the school. You're only competing with your specific race in the school. Now, Scalia made a comment that has brought him under incredible fire recently, where he said it's something to the effect of, and I'm actually going to see if I can't find the exact quote. I believe, yeah, here we go. I believe this is the quote. There are those who contend that it does not benefit African Americans to get them into the University of Texas where they do not do well, as opposed to having them go to a less advanced school, a slower track school, where they do well. I believe that is the quote that has brought him under fire recently. And it makes sense. The way that our culture works right now is anytime you make a statement that can be interpreted in a negative light, it will always be interpreted in a negative light by somebody. And if it just so happens that the negative light is interpreted by a group with a lot of power, you're fucked. So, civil rights activists, black rights activists, civil rights attorneys have all been crucifying this guy because they're claiming that he's going, well, obviously that means that black people can't do as well as school as white people, and he's racist, which is not what that statement was about. This statement itself was poorly worded. And if you sit there and dissect the actual words that he used, it's very, very simple to come to the conclusion that they came to, which I believe is wrong. What I think he was saying, and I think this is a valid question, is it beneficial for, in this specific case, an African American, but let's open it up to any minority group, to get into a college or a group that had they been forced to compete with the entire population as opposed to only the population of their particular minority, does that actually benefit them when they're already going to be if I guess what I'm trying to say is, if they couldn't get in, like if their grades weren't technically good enough to get them in if they were compared to everybody, but if they have this quota and they only have to compare it to their particular minority group, then that's the reason that they get in. Is that technically beneficial to them when they're going to technically already be a disadvantage because they're not as good a student as compared to their grades, compared to people from other groups, whether it's racial minorities or sexual preference minorities or anything like that? Does it really benefit them to get in simply because they have to get, because they have to fill that quota? And I think it's a valid point. I have, and I've spoken about them many times, I have my own issues with our higher education system, specifically undergraduate degrees. In general, probably about half of them are not worth the paper that they're printed on. And that's because of a lot of different things, but a large portion of it has to do with the fact that our education system in general in this school is based entirely on things that we can test on paper, which don't actually work in the real world. Practical applications, because they're significantly more difficult to quantify, are very much pushed to the wayside. So again, with my own personal feelings on our higher education system, is it beneficial for someone to get into a school or maybe get a job or something like that simply because there has to be a quota to fill? Where they no longer have to compete with everyone trying for a position. They only have to be the best of their particular group. Um, and I think that's what he was referencing. What it's been taken as is the idea that he's saying that black people can't do well in college and they need their own special colleges so that they can still do well, which 100% nowhere in there does he reference anything that says all African Americans need to go to less advanced schools or anything like that. He does make a statement. Like I said, I read the statement before, and he worded it poorly, which is surprising from a Supreme Court justice because they choose their wording so carefully. So he did screw up in how he worded it. I don't think that's what he actually meant. However, that is what the press is going with because that sells papers and that gets page clicks and stuff like that. If you have someone in a position of power that is racist or doing something naughty, people want to read about that. And so that's the route that they're going to take. The civil rights lawyers are trying to crucify him because it quite literally, it gets them more jobs. If they can claim that this person really, really high up is racist, that proves that there is it's job security is what it is. They 100% have a vested interest in this. The civil rights advocacy groups in general, this is kind of what they do. The entire purpose for a civil rights advocate or any advocate is to help a marginalized people. If the people are no longer marginalized, they really have no purpose. And when these are people that their job, what they do for a living that lets them buy food and pay their bills and that is to help marginalized people, they constantly need to be finding more marginalized people to help. That's what it is. So they do have a vested interest in this. Am I saying that these people are evil, horrible, disgusting people who are doing this only for the money? No, 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 no. I'm saying they do have a vested interest in this in the same way that the student that is suing has a vested interest as well. She wants to get into this college. She wasn't allowed in from her point of view simply because she was the wrong color. She has a vested interest because if this goes the way she wants it to, she can get into the college she wanted to get into. All of these people have vested interests in general. That's how being a human being works. I don't technically have a vested interest in this particular thing because I've never gone to the University of Texas. To be honest, I've only been to Texas, I think, like twice in my life. It's a lovely state, by the way. If you get a chance, visit it. Um, and to be blunt, I haven't had to deal with quotas. The job market that I'm going into particularly doesn't have quotas that they need to meet. And it's a skilled a skilled work field, meaning it's not something they can hire anyone to do. And so when it does take training and things like that, a lot of other things kind of get pushed out. You actually have to work to get into marketing and things like that. And so the idea that someone would be limiting their pool of potential candidates simply by their race or their sexual preference is just a really stupid idea. It's not something that I'm probably going to have to deal with. So I don't technically have a vested interest in this. However, what I don't like is when people misinterpret other people's wording and phrasing specifically to make them look bad so that their own interests can be served. I hate that. I think it's a horrible, horrible thing. And I think that's what's happening here. Now, it's very possible that they may find out that Scalia is just a seething racist and, he belongs to the KKK and all these stuff. I highly doubt that. Everything else I've heard about this particular justice, which is next to nothing, because I don't really follow the Supreme Court as much as I should, seems that the reason he is a Supreme Court justice is he's very, very good at his job, and he was appointed by a president that shared his political party, because that's how you get on the Supreme Court, by the way. I sincerely think this is simply being done to discredit someone that a few people don't like, and then a bunch of people are jumping on without actually checking the facts. And they're believing hype, and they're believing double wording and miscommunication and things like that. And it's turning into something that really shouldn't. This is the same thing that happened with the hands up, don't shoot movement, which we've already been told, oh God, a dozen different times that that never actually happened in Ferguson. People still believe 100% that it did because that's the story that they want to believe. And the same thing is true as here. It's the idea that this person said something that was poorly worded, but I think brings up a valid point. And if you guys have an opinion on it, do you think quotas are beneficial? Um, the entire idea of a quota is to reduce discrimination. That's why they exist, is to reduce discrimination so that everybody gets an equal chance at being able to do what it is that they want, despite other factors that they have no control in, like their race, like other protected classes. That's what these are designed for, to try and make it more difficult for people to discriminate. However, you eventually get to the point where the quotas are actually helping to discriminate, um, simply by creating different standards for different groups. Um, so, yeah, like I said, I think it's an interesting question. I think it has valid points on both sides. I think the entire argument behind it is, well, which is worse? Is it worse for us to get rid of quotas completely and have minorities in general have the ability to be discriminated against? Or would it be more effective for us to impose these quotas and have people that are not part of these particular minorities, who may be part of other minorities, getting discriminated against for completely different reasons, or by changing standards and things like that, because we're cutting things up into such small subsets that you now no longer have to compete as a whole. You only have to compete with your particular subset. Feel free to, as tactfully as possible, discuss that in the comments below. If it starts getting into hate mongering and stuff like that, all the comments will be deleted. But yeah, so like I said, another instance of the press and certain groups taking something not really out of context, but taking a misrepresentation of a statement and then blowing it well out of proportion. So yeah, that's all for me today. I will see you guys tomorrow for another Day December. All right. Bye bye.